Hey guys, my name is Andrew, welcome to Constantly Gaming, and in today's video, we're going to be going over my Pioneer tier list for the August 2020 format. Now with Walking Ballista, Inverter, Breach, and Kethis all finally out of the format, we can finally see all these other decks that were in the format that were completely being thrown out of the meta, finally be able to battle it out to see what the top decks are among them in the format. Now, I will say that it is very early on, and we might need to update this list 2 weeks from now when we get more results. But what I wanted to see, with just enough time to kind of see where everything lies, where we're looking at as far as representation and the power level as being shown from the results, where we're sitting at as far as the meta goes. I have them listed here from tier 0, 1, 2, Rogue, and everything else. And with that being said, before we get into the actual tier list, I want to remind everyone that today's sponsor is officially ManaTraders.com. So guys, it's expensive to play Magic, as we all know, and right now online is our only option with paper Magic being put on hold. If you want to stay competitive in today's meta, you have to be able to change decks whenever the meta shifts. So instead of spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on decks, I use ManaTraders.com, a service available for Magic Online players to rent any deck they want for as low as $9.99 a month. Use it for leagues, qualifiers, wherever you want. They also host a free tournament at least once per month with a cash payout up to $15,000. So if you want in on the savings and try out some decks we're going to talk about in today's video, click on the link in the description below and use my code TLG33, that's TLG33, to save 20% on your subscription, and you'll be helping out the channel. So if you want to save some money and support the channel, sign up for Mana Traders today. Alright, so we are in the tier list now. So what I wanted to talk about first was, in my opinion, the top deck to beat in the format right now, and that is going to be Niv to Light, and I'm putting it at tier 1. So it's the most powerful archetype to have success before the ban list and go unscathed on the ban list. You know, Uro and Teferi dodging the ban list is one of the biggest things for the deck, because those are, in my opinion, the main source of power from the deck. The only thing I can say here is that it is weak to aggro, and sometimes you can have some inconsistencies with the deck because you're having to play Mana Confluence, you're having to play all these shock lands. So sometimes you are weak to aggro, and sometimes you know, you without Niv Mizzet, without having the right cards at the right time, sometimes you just draw the wrong side of your deck. So definitely there is a fail rate, but honestly it's so consistent that I honestly, like, it is a little, you know, overhyped, I would say, that the inconsistency of it. It's just, you go so far above what everybody else is doing that I think that the power level at its floor is so high compared to what everybody else is doing that I think it is the deck to beat. So definitely look out for that. Now, it is a 5-color deck, so you want to kind of play some practice games getting used to that, because you definitely want to make sure that you understand what colors you have in your hand and stuff like that. So it can be tricky. And besides that, I think that the deck is not only the most powerful deck, but it has a great matchup against the other decks we're going to be talking about. So with that said, it is at my number 1 spot in tier 1. And now, with that said, let's go ahead and talk about what is, in my opinion, the best aggro deck in the format, and that is going to be Mono Black Aggro. So what I love about Mono Black Aggro is that it has a mix of interaction and speed. Thoughtseize is one of the best interactive spells, and having both Knight of the Evolution and Thoughtseize as options on turn 1 just feels amazing, especially going up against control. Niv to Light and the other slower decks in the meta kind of struggle against Thoughtseize, and that fast clock on top of that, because you can rip the only card that may be interaction out of their hand, and on top of that, because like for example Niv to Light, having to play a lot of shock lands, having to you know, play a slower game, it can completely stumble to Mono Black Aggro. And with Castle being able to refill your hand when you run out of gas, you have a use of your extra mana that a lot of these other decks don't have, like Mono Red, for example. So with a strong early game, very strong early game, and a decent mid game, I think this has to be the best aggro deck in the format right now. And since we're talking about mono black aggro, I just want to mention vampires as well. It's not clear if one is better than the other. They're very similar. They have a lot of the things that I said about mono black could be said about vampires. The only reason I don't have it as high is because not as many people are playing it. The representation isn't there. So with that said, take that as you will. Either of these decks are super good. I will say that I personally like vampires as far as power level goes, but I'm putting it higher than vampires for the simple fact that you're going to see a lot more often. So with that said, that's why I have both of these decks at tier 1. And with that said, the next deck I want to talk about, since we're talking about aggro, is going to be Burn. And I'm going to put Burn at tier 1 as well. So Burn is Burn, you know, we all know it. It's as, you know, good as it is now as it's ever been. It's, you know, it's one of those decks that's always going to be good. You know, trying to kill your opponent as fast as possible with a red strategy is always going to be good. Now, I will say that it's not my favorite aggro deck of the format, but it's definitely super good. And if you can goldfish your opponent to death, I mean, you can goldfish your opponent to death. So with that said, there's not really much I could talk about. I mean, it's Burn. Burn is Burn. So with that said, that's why I have it in tier 1. And the next deck we're going to be talking about is going to be Boros Feather. A lot of the same things I said about Mono Red can be said about Boros Feather, but I'm going to put it in tier 2 just because I just think it's, you know, not as fast, and also I think it's really prone to like heavy removal, and there's going to be a lot of removal in this format. Now that the metagame is slowing down, a lot of people are going to be playing a lot of removal. You know, you're going to have, you know, if you were playing Feather, and I don't know if everyone that's watching has tried, but if you get your main creatures knocked out of your hand and you're left with nothing but spells, I mean, you just lose the game. It's like playing, you know, Boggles and getting Thought Seized. It's just, it feels really bad. So I just keep it at tier 2. I think there is room for improvement. We might get some good stuff in the next set coming out, but for now, I'm gonna the highest I can put this deck is tier 2. And to join Boros Feather, I'm gonna have Orzhov Auras. I really do like this deck, but since the changes to Loris, I think Loris having to pay 3 extra mana for it just is not very good. I mean, it really was reliant on Loris to be able to pick itself back up when you have your board wiped, when you've had removal spell after removal spell gone after it over and over again. And without Loris being able to be a threat on turn 3 is just really bad. I mean, tapping out on one of your turns for Loris is just not good. I mean, the deck's fine, but if you're going to be playing a stompy kind of, you know, mid-range or aggro deck, which is more of an aggro deck, I just play Burn or Mono Black aggro, or even Feather, honestly. So with that said, it has seen some success, so definitely give it a try if you like auras, especially if you like auras. So with that said, that's why I have it in tier 2. So and speaking of some of the more mid-rangey strategies, as far as creature decks go, we're going to be talking about next is Soultide Dredge, and I'm going to have this at tier 1. Now, let me just tell you that, you know, that Dredge may seem kind of, you know, a misnomer. It might be a little misleading, but I mean, this deck is really, really, really powerful. Now, Dredge is named after the modern deck Dredge, where it's a very explosive graveyard deck. But the difference being with Soultide Dredge is in Pioneer is that it's more of a mid-range graveyard deck where you're trying to gain value over and over again. You're not trying to, you know, dredge, you know, slam your whole deck into your graveyard on turn 2. Instead, you're trying to get value over and over again by, milling over Narcomoebas, milling over, Silver Smoke Ghouls, milling over Creeping Chills to get back your Silver Smoke Ghouls, being able to put your Silver Smoke Ghoul onto the battlefield so you can get your Price Amalgams back. Stuff like that. And you also have Uro, which, again, gains you 3 life, which brings back your ghouls, so there's definitely some power and some synergy there. So definitely a deck to watch out for, and that is why I have it at tier 1. And with that said, the next deck we're going to be talking about is a deck that was actually recently banned in Historic, and that is going to be Winota, and I'm going to have Winota right here in tier 2. Now, I think that it is not nearly as powerful as it was in Historic, because I think the power level is much higher in Pioneer. And for that reason, I don't see it being tier 1 quite yet. I think that it's really, really prone to a lot of the heavy removal that we're going to be seeing in the format. And it's just not fast enough compared to a lot of the other aggro strategies. And to be honest with you, without Winota, I just feel like the deck's super medium. I mean, you're so reliant on that card, and there's not too many ways in the deck to be able to find it. So, unless there is some new card in the next set that makes finding Winota more consistent, I don't see this being any better than tier 2, but I could be wrong. But right now, it would be like tier 1.5 if I could put it. So, with that said, another banned card is going to be our next deck we're going to talk about, which is going to be Reclamation, and I'm going to put this in the Rogue section. Now, unlike Winota, I think that the Reclamation going into Pioneer is not as clear-cut. Honestly, a lot of people have found that the best color combination is Simic, and playing a more reactive kind of counterspell, flashy kind of game instead of trying to expansion explosion your opponent to death. And honestly, if you're going to play a reactive deck, you might as well just play Azorius Control, which we're about to talk about in a second. I just think it's a little overrated. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think of it any better than Rogue. So other than that, you already know what Reclamation does. You know the crazy stuff it does. So with that said, that's why I have it in the Rogue section. And the next deck we're going to be talking about is one of my favorites, and that is Azorius Control, and I have it at tier 1. Azorius Control not only still has Teferi, but also another card that dodged the ban list, Dig Through Time. Dig Through Time is the saving grace of this deck. Being able to dig 7 deep for any 2 cards that you need to survive and get to that late game is just incredible. Being able to refill your hand with the most important, potent, powerful cards at instant speed is broken. And as long as Dig Through Time is in the format and 3 fairies in the format, I think there is some place in the metagame. And honestly, we didn't see a lot of Azorius Control beforehand because, let's be real, you're not going to go through long game against Inverter. It's just not going to happen. Inverter's going to combo you out, anytime you decide to tap out. So it's just not good. So with that said, we're finally the deck's being gone, so that Azorius Control actually has a chance. So with that said, Azorius Control, tier 1, you know what it is. Teferi all day and counter spells. And with that said, yeah, let's go ahead and get to the next deck, which is going to be Sultai Delirium, and I'm going to have this at tier 1 as well. Sultai Delirium, not much to say about this deck. Thoughtseize, Uro, mid-range stuff, Emrakul, you know what it is. Still good, still decent. Not much to say about it. Tier 1. Let's move on. Sorry, this deck's kind of boring, not gonna lie. I like to talk about the more fun, exciting decks, like, for example, Spirits. Spirits, in my opinion, is the best, by far, tribal deck in the format. I have it above Azorius Control and below Niv Mizzet because I believe that right now it is the second best deck in the format. I think Spirits, with the inclusion of Lofty Denial, is just even better than it was before. Being able to have Selfless Spirit protect your board and a counter spell a very expected counterspell, completely clearing, keeping your board intact, while being able to beat down with lords on top of that is just, it's just a powerful a strategy. And what's really, really impressive about the deck is that it saw success before the ban list, and now just gets even better afterwards. And so, with that said, I'm really impressed by it. I actually played it recently, and I just saw so much success with it. So definitely give it a shot. It's actually pretty cheap. It's around the 120-ish ticks. And with one of our I believe it's the premium subscriptions, you can pick that up when most of these decks for the premium subscription. So definitely check that deck out. Azorius Spirit's one of my favorites, and that's why it is at tier 1. And the next deck we're going to talk about is going to be Jeskai Luca. Now, I know the representation isn't there for this deck, but Jeskai Luca is the real deal. I think this deck is so good. How good is it? I don't know, but I have seen people play it. It doesn't have the representation yet, but I'm telling you, it's going to be one of the best decks in the format. It is tier 1 for sure. Where it is in tier 1, I'm not totally sure, but I can tell you that this deck is the real deal. It is amazing, and that's why I have it in tier 1. Honestly, Fires of Invention, Yorion, all those, all the nightmares I can remember from playing Standard and getting my entire board stolen by Agent of Treachery is just, it all comes back when I see this deck being played again. And honestly, that 3-mana attacks on Yorion, you don't feel it. It's so good. It's so powerful. Play this deck. This deck's super good. Don't sleep on it unless you like, losing all your games. So with that said, that's why I have it in tier 1. And the next deck we're going to talk about is going to be Insol. Insol's bad. Real bad. Stubborn Now's bad. Don't play this deck. Play literally any other aggro deck. Moving on. Lotus Breach. Also super bad. Without Breach, not a good deck. I know people want to try to make it work anyways. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Play anything else. Just don't do it. And then the last deck we're going to be talking about is going to be Mono Green Devotion. Now, I'm going to have it in tier 2. Honestly, I think this deck is a little overrated. A lot of people are playing it, but I don't think it's nearly as good as Jeskai Luca, the aggro decks, Azorius Control, and all these other decks that we're talking about. Actually, I no, I'm going to keep it in tier 2. Because I think it's a little overrated. Without Walking Ballista, and Walking Ballista was a real powerful card for the deck, I don't see it any better than tier 1.5, tier 2. So that's why I have it in tier 2. It's still very powerful playing Nykthos, playing Vivian, being able to constantly get cards from your sideboard and Ulamog your opponent. It is super powerful still, but honestly, just people are doing crazier stuff right now, and whether you're going to be alive in time to do that and having your stuff resolve for you to do that, it's not going to happen in my opinion. So that's why I have it in tier 2. Now, I could be wrong about Mono Green, but that's where I feel like it is right now. So with that being said, that is the tier list. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching the video. I really appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you look down in the description, you're going to be seeing a link to my Mana Traders, my Mana Traders link. And if you use TLG33, like we said before, you can get 20% off on your order. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, and leave any comment with any criticism that you can. I just want to make these videos as good as they possibly can. So yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.